Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be breaking down 538's newest 2024 election polling averages for every swing or battleground state. This is just new. They just released it the day I'm recording this, April 29. They just updated the 538 website and they added in the polling averages for every single swing state that they have not done since 2022, the midterms, I believe so. So, starting off with the map, we're going to be filling out these battleground states and swing states based off of 538's averages alone. And this is not going to be my prediction. This is going to be based off of 538.com when I fill out the map. Before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed and click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, we have memberships, so if you're interested in that, you can find the link in the description section. We have custom perks and custom emojis that you can use whenever you comment on any of my videos. So starting off with the state of Florida, current polling averages on 538.com has Trump winning the state by double digits, 10.5%, which is way more than what he got in 2020. Trump won the state by roughly 3 to 4 points back in 2020. And current 538 averages has Trump winning the state by roughly 10%, which in my opinion, anything within double digits is considered safe. So Donald Trump is already comfortably winning Florida, and keep in mind that Republicans have gained tremendously in terms of voter registration. You take a look at 2020, in which Democrats had the advantage in terms of voter registration by 97,000. You fast forward 4 years later, in 2024, this election, Republicans have a significant advantage in terms of voter registration in the state of Florida alone, 888,000. That's the lead for the Republicans in terms of registration as of right now. So Democrats are already trailing. And so I do believe those numbers. I do think Trump is comfortably going to win Florida in 2024. And believe it or not, look at all these polls. In the state of New York, Biden can't even get past 12%. Not a single poll in the state of New York, guys. New York is a state that Biden comfortably won back in 2020 by over 20 points. And the most he's leading in any poll on 538 in the state of New York is 12 at the most. On average, his lead is in between 9 to 10%, which is actually considered a likely margin. So New York at this point in time is not safe for Biden anymore. And keep in mind, don't forget that Lee Zeldin came within 5% on the governorship from actually winning this state. And so you can see the trends and the shifts go in favor of Republicans in New York could be decided within single digits, and that's exactly what the polls on 538 are reflecting. This is unbelievable and horrible news for the Biden campaign. And then now moving on to the state of Texas, which current polling averages has Trump winning the state of Texas by the same exact margin as he's winning in Florida by 10.5%. This is not good news for the Biden campaign, as Trump won this state by 5 to 6 points back in the 2020 election. So this is also going to be considered safe, comfortable leads for Donald Trump. Biden is expected to lose a lot of support among Hispanics in this state, and that's not going to go well for him. And same thing goes for Florida. A lot of Cubans are leaning towards the right. And so with that being said, Biden could actually do very poorly in a popular vote in states like New York, in which if Trump picks Lee Zeldin as his vice president, I can see New York being, in play with the popular vote in 2024. And then as for Iowa, Trump is cracking double digits on 538's averages. So with that being said, that's also going to be considered safe for the former president. Then when we take a look at voter registration, back in the 2020 election, Republicans only led Democrats by 13,000 in terms of registration. Now, 4 years later in 2024, that number has skyrocketed significantly to 148,000. That's the lead for Republicans in the state of Iowa in terms of voter registration. And then we move on to the state of Ohio. As for the current polling averages on 538, Trump is winning Ohio by roughly 9.5 percentage points, which obviously is considered a likely margin because he obviously does not crack double digits. So with that being said, he's still going to comfortably win it, but by a likely margin because he can't crack 10% quite yet on the 538 averages. He's winning the state of Ohio by roughly 9.5%. And then as for the state of Colorado, this state is actually a left trendy state. Democrats have gained roughly 4,000 in terms of voter registration from the year of 2020 to 2024. And so with that being said, I think Colorado gets slightly bluer than where it was 4 years ago. And then current polling averages has Biden winning the state by roughly 9 to 10 percentage points, which is arguably likely or safe. I'm going to leave it as likely for now. And then the state neighboring Colorado, as for New Mexico, this state is a border state, and Biden is disapproved of on the issue of immigration the most out of any other issue. But in my opinion, New Mexico is a lot bluer than what some people may think. Places like Albuquerque, Democratic strongholds, I think would help Biden. So I think he's still going to win this by likely margin. And polling averages shows that Biden is going to do very well in New Mexico. It's not going to be competitive, and I think he should comfortably win that state. And as for the deep southern state of Georgia, Donald Trump has leads in between 6 to 7%, which is a lean margin in my opinion. And in this state, Biden won this back in 2020 for the first time for any Democrat ever since Bill Clinton, I believe. And he won it by a margin of 0.3%, roughly 11,000 votes, which is a very slim margin in a more favorable year. He did tremendous among African-American communities. And with that being said, I don't expect him to get the nearly 90% he got among blacks this time around. He's disapproved among all sorts of minority groups. And with that being said, I expect him to drop as low as 80%. And if Trump is lucky enough, Biden only gets 70% among African-American support, which is good for any Republican. Trump is polling a fourth among them, roughly 25%. So if that's the real actual numbers on election day, Trump is easily going to win the state of Georgia in 2024 by a lean margin at the end of the day. This state swung 6 points to the left in 2020, and I expect it to get redder in 2024 in favor of Donald Trump. Places like Atlanta heavily favored Biden in 2020, and if Biden does not hold a lot of that support in the Atlanta suburbs, Savannah, that type of area, I think Trump is on track to flip the state. Keep in mind, it's going to be probably one of the more easier flips for Trump, considering that it was the closest state that Trump lost in 2024, besides Arizona. And then now as for the state of Virginia, Biden's lead on average in the state of Virginia is roughly 5%, which was way lower than where he actually got in 2020. Keep in mind, he cracked double digits. He won the state by 10 points 4 years ago. And the governor, actually, Glenn Youngkin, endorsed Donald Trump. So maybe that can narrow up the margins, make this race a little bit closer. But still, it could get very close. Doesn't matter how close it gets. I think Biden is still more than likely going to win this state in 2024. And then as for North Carolina, Donald Trump is leading on by an average of nearly 6%, which is going to be considered a lean margin. Keep in mind, Trump won this state back in 2020 by roughly 1.5 percentage points, which is obviously not the greatest margin, but I think the state is slightly shifting towards the right. Republicans have gained in terms of voter registration. Keep in mind, back in 2020, Democrats had the advantage in terms of registration by 391,000. Now, 4 years later, in 2024, Democrats still have the advantage, but it's way less. They lost nearly 200,000 of that support. And so with that being said, I expect Trump to expand his lead in this state, similar to his 2016 margin, and Trump is on track to win the state according to polling averages from 538. His lead is almost 6% at the current moment. For the state of New Hampshire, Biden's actually polling very decently. He's up by roughly 6 to 7 points in this state, according to a majority of polling averages from 538. I don't expect Trump to flip this state. I really don't. I think he can come very close, within 1 to 2 percentage points, which is not the margin I have Biden getting. In my opinion, Biden wins New Hampshire by roughly 4 to 5% in 2024. And then as for the state of Minnesota, Biden is leading on average by roughly 4 points in this state. And keep in mind, main reason why Biden did tremendously well, he won this by 7% in 2020, was because obviously George Floyd, you saw what happened with BLM. He had that momentum in the Minneapolis area and basically the suburbs. It honestly comes down to suburban women and issues like abortion. And with that being said, I think Minnesota is still a very blue state. And it's actually getting a little bit more bluer. It's going to be closer than where it was in 2020, considering that he does not have that BLM momentum. And so at the end of the day, according to majority of polling averages, he's up by a lean margin of 4 points on average in this state for Joe Biden. Now, moving on to the southern state of Arizona, another border state, and Biden is underwater on the issue of immigration by a net negative 33 points. He is disapproved of on the issue of the border crisis more than any other issue. And if voters are impacted by this, I expect Arizona to be another flip for the former president. Current polling averages on 538.com suggest Trump is up in the state by roughly 4% on average. And keep in mind, Biden only won this state by roughly 10,000 votes back in the 2020 election by a margin of 0.4%. Don't get me wrong, Arizona is a left trendy state. I think it honestly comes down to Maricopa County. If Biden hangs on to Maricopa, I think he's on track to win this state. If Trump flips to Maricopa, I think Trump can win this state in 2024. I think if the border is enough, then it would probably go in favor of Donald Trump. With that being said, Trump is leading by, on average, in the state of Arizona on 538 by a lean margin at the end of the day. And now moving on to the state of Nevada. Donald Trump has a significant lead in this state by 6.5% on average in the state of Nevada. Keep in mind, Biden won this state by over 2% back in the 2020 election. So polls are saying that's going to be an 8-point swing to the right. In my opinion, that is not accurate. I don't think this is actually going to be the numbers on election day, considering that polls do tend to overestimate Republicans time and time again in the state of Nevada. But in terms of voter registration, Republicans have made gains. Back in 2020, Democrats only led in terms of voter registration by 87,000 votes. Now it's down to 32,000. So you can see the shifts and the trends go in favor of Republicans. If Donald Trump is able to flip Reno County, I think he's on track to win a state, basically Washoe, that type of region. And then if he's able to peel a lot of that support away from Biden in the Clark County, Vegas area, I think he's also probably going to win this state in 2024. They just elected a Republican governor, so the state is trending to the right. And current polling averages has Trump winning the state by a lean margin of 6% in 2024. But in my opinion, that's an overestimate because they always overestimate Republicans. So I think 1 to 2% is more accurate than something like 6%. I mean, it's basically common sense. And now moving on to the Rust Belt states before I close out this video, starting off with Wisconsin. So on average, 538 suggests that Trump is favored in this state by a lead margin of 3 percentage points. This is good for any Republican in any Rust Belt state because obviously in most recent years you would see a blue wall and no Republican would be able to crack these Rust Belt states. And considering Trump has a 3% advantage in Wisconsin is horrible news for the Biden campaign. And it honestly comes down to blue-collar workers, the hard-working class, issues like inflation, the economy, what you're paying at the grocery store, gas prices, and how much you're making overall. Were you better off 4 years ago than where you are today? Issues like that really matters to these Rust Belt voters. And at the end of the day, Trump is leading on average in 538 by a lean margin of 3 points in the state, which is horrible news for Biden considering that they underestimated Trump in this state back in 2020 by 6 points, and he's up by 3 points. Like, that is not good news for Joe Biden. And now moving on to the state neighboring Wisconsin, Michigan, obviously a fellow Rust Belt state. You saw what happened in the Democratic primaries. Roughly 100,000 people voted uncommitted. So there was a large uncommitted vote. And Biden won the state by roughly 150,000 votes back in the 2020 election. Now, don't get me wrong. Michigan, even though it's still shifting towards the right because of that uncommitted vote, places like the Detroit area is shifting towards the left. But in terms of 538 polling averages, Trump has a lead of 2% in the state, which is going to be considered a lean margin. And that is not good news for Joe Biden, considering that he almost got 3% in the state back in 2020. And now polls are saying Trump is up by 2 points. So, and now the last and final state before we end out this video is Biden's home state. Pennsylvania, another Rust Belt state. In terms of voter registration, Republicans have made gains. Back in 2020, Democrats had the advantage in terms of registration by 685,000. Now it's down to roughly 400,000. So that's a big increase for the Republicans. But you take a look at 538 polling averages in this state. Donald Trump is winning by an average 1.5% in Biden's own home state. And I think if Biden does not overperform in what the polls are saying in Philadelphia, the Pittsburgh suburbs, basically Democratic strongholds, he's probably not going to win this state. And considering that this state underestimated Trump by 2 points in 2020, and he's still up by 1.5% this time around, is not good news for Biden. And honestly, if Trump is able to flip Erie County, I think he's on track to win this state. But you saw what happened in the Republican primaries. Trump actually did not do that well in Erie County, and Nikki Haley actually got a lot of support in there. So maybe what the polls are saying is true on what happens on election day. But Donald Trump is nearly going to flip the state of Pennsylvania by a till margin in 2024, according to 538 polling averages. Keep in mind, this is not my actual prediction. This is basically what the polls on 538.com is saying. Trump wins with 313 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 225, basically sending him off to retirement. So let me know if you agree with the map, what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below. And don't forget, one last final reminder before I close out this video is to subscribe and click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, we have memberships. You can find the link to that in the description section. We have custom perks and custom emojis that you can use whenever you comment on any of my videos. Thank you everyone for watching.